Give us a roll call.
You bet. Kathy?
Here.
Candy? Here. Rachel here. Nellie? Here.
Please turn off your volume.
Bart?
Here.
Steve?
Here.
Dave?
Here.
Barbara? Absent. Marge? Bev? Here. Okay, hi Bev, sorry. Lanny? Knew he wasn't gonna be here, and Scott.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a quorum. Do we have anybody that would like to make an amendment to the agenda? And if not, we'll open it for approval of the agenda.
I move approval of the agenda.
Okay, Nellie, and do I have a second?
A second.
Okay, I heard that, I heard Candy's voice first, but so Candy would be the second. And all in agreement of approving the agenda, please raise your hand. All that unanimous. Okay, just housekeeping. This is the workshop, so we will have no motions. Just to remind everybody, no motions or seconds at this work session. And also just a reminder, if you would like to speak, please raise your hand and be recognized so that we can make sure that everybody can hear one speaker at a time. So with that, we will move on to Steve Reynolds, who is asked for a map discussion. And Steve, go ahead.
Thank you, Kathy. So I put together a little presentation that'll take a couple minutes. When I was looking at the GVR website and looking for information on map, I found a paragraph. It says, do you or a GVR member you know need assistance to pay our annual GVR dues? The Member Assistance Program, established in 1995, provides financial assistance to qualifying GVR members. MAP funds are provided through the generous donations of GVR members and the Green Valley community. Charitable donations to the program may be made to the GVR Foundation. The foundation is a public charity recognized by the IRS as tax exempt under 501c3. Individual donations to the foundation for programs such as MAP are tax deductible as allowed by law. Now, the website does not say anything about our GVR MAP account. So I'm adding this, that our members also contribute directly to GVR, which is a 501c4, when paying their dues or donating separately throughout the year. These dollars go directly into a separate GVR MAP account. All right. So I'm just going to talk about 2024 and 25 and why this drew my attention at a FAC meeting in March. We had a survey, GVR did a survey in 2022, and it showed 75% of the sample population either knew nothing about MAP or nothing about how it worked. So why now? Why am I bringing this up now? Well, as I said, I noticed it in the March FAC meeting, and I don't think we'd ever talked about MAP from a financial standpoint before. And Howie was very helpful in answering all my questions. Thank you, Howie, because I was asking a lot of questions in emails, and he came up with a new schedule. So in 2025, GVR reevaluated its approach to MAP because there were less donations available to award to its applicants. And the staff changed the way it awarded MAP funds this year. 60% of the approved applicants were awarded partial credits. Of the 70 total, 30 received 75% or $398, and 40 received 50% or $265. The other 40%, which made up 46, were awarded full $530 credits. And in 2025, GVR awarded 46,920 total awards to its members. All right, in 2024, we had a difference, a different evaluation. GVR awarded $53,045 for MAP, which was made up of 109 full awards of $515 and one partial. MAP is credited $306,762 in members' dues over the last 9 years. All right. What will a new policy accomplish? It will set up guidelines for staff to use in administering GVR's annual MAP awards by one, combining income and asset criteria for qualifying members' MAP awards. Two, work with the GVR Foundation in recommending annual award funds needed for member credits, explore opportunities for creating an endowment for MAP. Three, work with GVR members and clubs to promote MAP and increase its annual donor contributions by donating to GVR's MAP account. Four, identify a new budget line on GVR's financials in order to track and manage MAP funds. And five, develop appropriate timing for MAP's application process and awards. So if we go to page 6 of the handout, it gives a new schedule, which kind of will give everybody an idea of what's happened over the last 9 years. If you look at 2025, we had 143 applicants. We approved 116 awards, of which 46 were full and 70 were partial. And then we had total dues waived of 46,920. And of that, the GVR paid 21,920 out of its member credit account, and the foundation contributed 25,000. So if we go back a year and look at 2024, we had 112 applicants, of which 109 received full awards and one received partial. We paid out $53,045 in awards, of which $30,945 came from GVR, and the foundation contributed 22,100. Now, if you look at the bottom line here, this is interesting. GVR cash balance award. So this is the cash that comes in directly from GVR's members through donations when they pay their annual dues or separate donations throughout the year. In 2023, well, you can see, let's go back to 2020. We had almost $15,000 in the account. Then we paid out 18,136, and we had a cash balance of 9,008, right? So we actually raised money and then reduced it by the amount we paid. And then the foundation paid 16. In 2022, the balance went up to 13,370 in the account. GVR paid 14,460. Foundation paid 21,900. In 2023, balance is 15,000. The foundation paid 30,000 that year, and then GVR paid 18. And now we're going down in 24 and 25. It doesn't look like we're raising as much money through our membership, and we've got a balance of $1,700 after 2025 awards were paid. So this caught my attention because there's been a variance in how we've administered and paid GVR. Not that, and I know that every year is different based on the donations and how much money we have to work with. So, Kathy, that's my presentation. Thank you.
Just Steve. Do I have any comments from anybody that would like to speak to this? Steve's just presented.
No speak.
No.
Well, I think I think you raised a good point about the awareness of the MAP program. And I think over the last couple of years, there's been a increased intent by making people aware that they can apply for MAP to have their dues. I've seen it in the newsletter posted a couple of times. I think secondly, when you look at the GVR Foundation, their continued support is an important part of the program. I do note in 2023, it looks as if they usually had contributed $25,000. I think there was a 3-year contract for 21 through 23, and they actually had paid a little bit more than that. I don't know if we approached them for additional assistance that year, because you can see that the number of applicants went up. So I think a broader question is, I think it's an important program. I think the question is how much do we as a board specify the policy or the operational guidelines for the program versus the policy intent? I think that would be my question.
Okay.
I have a question about, or, yeah.
Hang on a minute, Bart, because Steve was. gonna say
Let Bart go ahead.
something. All right, go ahead, Bart.
Okay, thanks. I sent an email around yesterday, which everybody has there, I think. And I'll briefly hit the points that I made in that email. Number one, I'm curious as to how many recipients in 2025 are repeat customers for MAP. The reason that I'm curious about that is that I believe that most donors regard MAP as a program that's essentially a bridge for people to get over a rough patch. But I wonder if maybe it's turning from a bridge into a highway for some number of GVR members that I don't know. So I am curious about those figures. How many of these are repeat customers, and how many times have they repeated? The second point that I raised in my email relates to net worth of applicants. That's a question that isn't asked, or at least I didn't see it on the 2025 MAP application, but I think it's an important question. Depending on the type of asset, it would be possible for applicants to sit on very substantial assets, just assets that don't generate income, and still qualify for MAP, which I think everybody would agree is not the goal of the program. And as a subset of assets owned, the house, the actual rooftop that the applicant owns, I imagine that quite a few applicants own their houses outright, unencumbered by mortgages. And it's pretty easy to pull money out of a house via a reverse mortgage or a home equity loan. And you don't have to pull very much. You can get a home equity line of credit. Now, this is sort of addressing a response from one of our board members. With a home equity line of credit, it's just that, a line of credit. You don't have to access it. So I wonder if it might be worthwhile for us to ask about net worth, and also ask about whether the rooftop owned by the applicant is in fact owned outright, and thus whether that applicant is essentially failing to avail him or herself of an opportunity to make those GVR dues payments on their own without MAP. I understand that quite a few people in GVR, and I'm sure some MAP applicants, don't want any line of credit or mortgage attached to their home. And I understand that desire, but I don't think that desire is a valid reason for asking for charity from other people. And with that, I'll close. Thanks very much.
Scott?
I just wanted to give a little bit of background. MAP has been around for quite some time. The board doesn't have a policy on the administration of MAP, the criteria for MAP, the forms for MAP, any of that. The board, when it adopted this program, handed it over to staff, administration and finance to come up with criteria and manage it. And that's really where it's been. So it sounds like the board may be interested in developing a policy so that staff has some parameters to work with, but as of today and historically, there haven't been parameters. There's been no guidelines or policy whatsoever from the board. Staff has simply taken a look at how much money GVR has raised and how much money is available from the foundation, and taken a look at the applications, the number of applications, the criteria such as 200% of the poverty level. Some years, 100% awards were able to be given. In other years, less. There hasn't been necessarily like I said, a consistent policy to look towards when administering this program. So to bring it back, this is a new step for the board, and I'm not discouraging you from doing it. In fact, having guidelines from the board, I think, would make this an easier process. But if this is something you want to take back and put into a policy for us, we support it. But I just wanted to let you know, you don't have anything like that right now.
Just a follow-up question for Scott. The criteria that you have been using, has that been consistent with the 200% of poverty lines since the beginning? So you've worked within that guideline and then administered it, partialed it out, but worked within 200% of the poverty lines.
That's been our practice. Dave's been here 7 years and I'm in my 5th. So that has been our practice.
Do we look at the members who are applying? Do we know what their investment portfolio looks like?
We don't. In fact, I think we look at their tax returns.
Yes.
And we sometimes looked at bank statements. I don't know if we still look at bank statements, but that's it. I don't think we know anything about their home ownership, their bank loans, their offshore accounts, their inheritance. We just don't. So it doesn't mean we couldn't or shouldn't, but we just haven't. We've talked a bit, at least at the staff level, about taking a look at federal guidelines and maybe just following that standard, whatever that may be, just to make it, again, a simple process for everyone, but also maybe what the feds have as a criteria. It's probably a good benchmark.
Hey, I have the application in front of me that was from, I think 2023. And in that, it does say that they look at, Howie and David, look at bank statements, 2 years of bank statement, 2 months of bank statements, and checking savings, investments account, federal tax return. To me, that's a solid criteria that Howie and David are using in order to figure out who is going to get the MAP award. Okay, we are not in the business to tell people they need to take out a reverse mortgage, or we need to look at this or that this is a member's private business as far as I'm concerned. We have solid criteria. The staff has figured out how to look at it, and then they can determine whether it's a full award, a half award, or no one is getting awarded because they didn't meet the guidelines or this criteria. So me personally, no, I don't think the board needs to get involved in a policy because I think the staff is doing a good job.
Beth?
I will say, as I did the other day, mistakenly in an email, I am absolutely opposed to suggesting that somebody take out a home equity loan or a reverse mortgage. I have experience with someone who did that to pay bills. And when the husband died of cancer and the wife was getting a little dementia or Alzheimer's or something and had to move, they wanted to move her into assisted living. And she had no idea when she sold her house to us that she had no money because she had to pay back that reverse mortgage. And so it put them and her family, an only sister of elderly, of course, who were not in the position to make any kind of payments or care for her. So I think that would be the absolutely wrong thing to do. We would take our people from being in a maybe a difficult position already and making it a worse position. And as far as their if they have substantial assets, I agree that should be looked at if it was feasible. But unless somebody voluntarily discloses that they have brokerage accounts or investment accounts at various locations, many people deal with more than one firm. Unless they volunteer that information, we really have no way to go after it or to look at it. And I'm thinking people that are asking for assistance are not going to volunteer that information. I also think it would require probably addition to staff to do that research. And I don't know how many extra people we need to hire for that, but don't think anybody really wants us to hire more people right now. So if people want to volunteer that information, great. And otherwise, I think we're stuck with the way it is, that they can look at bank statements and tax returns and that's it. I mean, whatever people provide, but
Well, I have a couple of comments on mine. I don't really look at this the same way, I guess, as some people do. I don't look at it as a bridge, and I don't look at it as a highway. I think when people have tragedies in their life, that it's hard enough to deal with that than to have an organization like us come to them and say, well, you have to verify your income to us or your worth. And I'm sorry that you're having a tragedy or that it might last 2 years or 10 years. It could be either. I have been very blessed with very good health all of my life. There are so many people in this world that have not. Not only that, there are times when they have to take care of disabilities in their family. Doesn't affect them particularly, but they have to take care of family members that may even grow into adults where they're still taking care of them. I think it's wrong for GVR to even consider more than we are asking at this point. If the federal government is only asking you to submit your tax return to see that you are within the 200% of the federal poverty level, then I think that's good enough for us. They are asking us to cover $530, which is a piddly amount in my estimation, compared to the massive dollar amounts that some people have to put out for illness, tragedy. I don't care what you want to call it, but it's ongoing. It never stops in 1 year. I don't think that we even need to do a policy. Our staff has been taking care of this for years. I was here when the map came into being back in 2016, and the staff has handled it all these years. I don't think it's up to a board member or a board as a whole, not this year, not in future years, to get into someone's financial being. I will tell you, if you're going to do that kind of thing and require them to submit something to you that they don't even have to do to the federal government, you're gonna end up with people that say, well, then I won't even apply for MAP, I'll just stop paying my dues. And that's gonna cause a problem with GVR. Because then GVR's gotta go out and they gotta put a lien on your house. And then if you decide, okay, well, I'm not gonna pay until the day I die, GVR is gonna have to do all of the paperwork for each one of those people that didn't pay their dues to try to get that money back, and you may not get it back. I think we're getting in way too deep in the weeds in this item, if you will. And I think staff is doing a good job. They have a criteria based on what Howie sent to us. They spent a lot of time this last year, invested a lot of time developing the process for 25 for partial awards, and now they're set up for 26. I don't want to get involved in specifying that a member has to submit to us more and more financial information. It's really none of our business. Does anybody else have comments for this? Bart?
Yeah, maybe you misunderstand, Kathy. I don't think any board member has made any kind of motion or even a move towards a motion on this. this is really just essentially, these are, as far as I'm concerned, questions for staff who administer the program. If you read my email, you'll see, you know, might it make sense to add a question about substantial assets? And incidentally, that would just be that, just a question about substantial assets. It, at least as I would envision it, if it were employed, it would not ask for documentation, it would just ask, I mean, do you have substantial assets that are not generating income? Obviously, the assets that do generate income are going to be shown on the tax returns, which we already require. So, you know, please don't worry so much. I'm not aware of any board member that wants to create an independent or separate policy. These were just questions that occurred to me, and as they've occurred in previous years. Similarly, repeat customers. I will tell you that there is a belief on the part of at least some donors, because I've spoken to them, that this is a temporary thing. This is not the kind of thing that a GVR member could get multiple times over multiple years, at least in their view. And yet I believe that might be so. So it might be something useful for GVR staff to look at, you know, how many times the course of a person's residency in Green Valley with a GVR rooftop, are they going to be eligible to get MAP? That's a perfectly reasonable question. It's not insulting or demeaning. So anyway, I think you're worried about things that really are not happening. Thanks.
Okay, just to respond, I don't think I'm worried about something that's not happening when we're asking them to provide more than what the federal government does. I think the groundwork is there, especially for federal government. I was reading in the paper this morning, just a short portion where there was a program that's being cut out for people who have disability, people at home that they're caring for. As I recall, it stated 88,000 people in the state of Arizona that would be cut off or cut down on this program the federal government is providing. And at least 10,000 people are within Pima County, and there has to be some people in Green Valley that would meet and be losing money on that particular program. This is where we are now. This is going to get worse with all of these programs being cut. We're going to have more people applying for help through that program. And I tell you, we gotta really, really thank all of these people that have the decency to donate money to those that don't have as much. Because I do not see where these people would come forward. I guess we had a couple that maybe didn't understand the criteria when they applied, so they were denied. But I just don't see people coming forward to say, I need to have MAP if I don't need it, or I need a contribution if I don't really need it. I don't think people want to ask for help if they don't need it. And I just have to disagree with you, Bart. I'm sorry. I hope the people that you talk to do consider that some families have these tragedies and illnesses that go from year to year to year. And they have no control over that. So I just have to disagree with that perspective. Elliot?
I think a board member has raised the question, and I guess I would ask for clarification from Steve that he was looking for a policy. Maybe I was wrong to be established. I thought I heard 3 or 4 different recommendations he was talking about and looking at moving forward to a board session. Is that right? Am I right on that?
Yeah, and that's based on, a lot of that's based on staff and what's in the, you know, the variances that we had between last year and this year because we didn't have enough money.
Right. But are you asking the board to create a policy, or are you asking?
Yeah, to look at look at creating a policy so that staff has guidelines on how to administer the MAP program in the future.
Do you not
Do
think
have
they're doing a good
guidelines.
job now, that we would have to set a specific policy?
I'm trying to make it more efficient for them. I think they're doing a fine job with how they're, with the money they have. But if you look at how many partials they gave in 2025 compared to 2024, now, did the income change that much? I don't know. We don't have the data to determine if the same people applied between the 2 years, if the income really did change that much. But I have a feeling that the parameters didn't change that much. It was more that we didn't have enough money to pay the full awards. So that's what concerns me about not having a policy to work from. And also I see the balance in our account continuing to go down. So next year, in 2026, we're gonna have to raise a lot more money through GVR donations or ask that the foundation help us out more so that we can keep up with the MAP awards. So I think it's more complicated based on, without the data, we don't have all the facts without all the data. Yeah.
Well, again, I think we're getting into the weeds, way deep into the weeds when staff has already made adjustments in past years coming forward. And you're right, we haven't had the income this last year that we've had probably in previous years. At the same time, that's not GVR's responsibility. That comes from the people out of the goodness of their heart contributing to that program. That's not money coming out of GVR.
Yeah, but
And I don't know how many people understand that.
yeah, but GVR promotes a lot of it.
Because we promote it, because we're trying to help members.
Yeah, we have a plan, right? That is part of the policy. I think staff has requested a policy that we work on it to give them some assistance. So that means a lot to me.
I think we would like a policy if we're gonna have questions such as why did you only provide partial awards this year compared to full awards the previous year? Because there's no policy that says that right now. So it puts us in a bit of a defensive position saying, well, wait a minute, this has been in our lane for 5 or 6 years. We've done a good job administering it. If you're unhappy with how we're administering it, then please provide us clear direction on what your expectations are. So that's where the notion of it would be helpful to have a policy if the board is going to question, well, why did you do partials this year and fulls the previous year? Well, if you wanna have those parameters, then give us those parameters. And if you don't, then I would say, then let us continue administering the program. So it's a board decision and we're good either way. So whatever I can help you with.
Bev,
To me, it seems simple, not exact, but simple. Last year we had, $7,000 more to spend. And we had 112 applicants. This year, we had 143 applicants. That's a big difference. And you maybe only gave one partial last year and 70 this year because you've got $7,000 less and way more applicants. So instead of giving everybody 100%, you've got to give some of them, okay, you need it, but you don't need it as much as this person. So we're only going to give you a partial. It makes sense. It's just, I don't question that.
do you think that's not easy enough to answer a question each year as it should, if it comes up what we had? Why didn't we give as much as we did last year?
Oh, I'm not questioning that at all.
Then-
Yeah, no,
Then I would agree with you,
Yeah.
because I don't think we need a policy to state that.
no,
I
that's,
mean, yeah, I
Hang
mean,
on.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I would like to point out though that in the last couple of years, it's been less than 1% of people that have actually applied for money from the MAP program. So it's not like 30%, 20%. So many of our members are asking for help. It's not that many people asking for help. And I think we do need to try to help them as much as we can, and that's gonna come down to how much money you get from the foundation, and how much money that our members contribute. And then again, like I said, that's up to the staff to determine with their criteria in the application where the money goes. And again, I think we should stay out of it. It's none of our business if somebody owns a yacht or they own something in a Swiss bank account or 5 houses or 2 houses or whatever. It's none of our business.
Any
one
other, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, yeah, we had 143 applicants this year compared to 112 this year. But you know, a good portion of those, anything between 143 and 116 didn't qualify. They didn't qualify mostly because they were over the 200% threshold. Some of them were what's the word, late on payments previously. They didn't qualify for whatever reason. They weren't considered a member in good standing. You have to be a member in good standing at this point. So that was that is one of the reasons we had so many. But I think because we've been advertising and talking about it, and the foundation has been doing a great successful bingo event to raise MAP, and clubs have been involved with competitions on raising funds for MAP. There's been a lot more discussion about what is MAP. And so I suspect to a great degree, that's why we've seen such a huge bump in MAP applications, even though they didn't necessarily qualify. I do think this year, I inserted myself a bit more than I have in previous years. I wanted us to be a little bit more thoughtful about how those grants are applied. And so we did take a look at the 200% threshold, and we broke it down to 150% and 100% threshold. And it made sense to us after we talked about it that those that are in greater need should get the 100%, and maybe those that are in lesser need should get 75, and those that are in lesser need should maybe get a 50%. So that's really why we stratified it this year, and not in previous years. That's the simple answer, and the thought and the thinking behind it. I go back to, if the board wants to set a policy that 100% of all applicants get funded based on funding available, then please just, you know, pass that policy so that we can administer it.
Then we have to justify to the people who got nothing.
Well, sure, there's only so much money, and you know, I think the foundation would have gladly given us some more money if we would have asked for it. But I think, again, because it was a little bit more nuanced this year than in previous years, we didn't feel like we needed to go ask the foundation for more money, because the greater need received the 100%, whereas the lesser need received the 50%. Again, if the board is unhappy with how that has been administered, we just need a policy to tell us exactly what your expectations are. But again, it's been in staff's lane for many, many years. If we want to take it out and put it in the boards, we are more than happy to do it.
Eric, you have it, your turn.
If you don't mind,
Sure, go ahead.
first of all, be careful what you ask for. And what I mean by that is, you set a policy, now fund that policy. You might be funding it with dues money that you're taking in rather than just donations. And to be able to separate those two might come into difficulty. Number two, the foundation is working diligently to increase its endowment level. Our goal at the foundation is to get a $1.5 million endowment for MAP. Why is that important? If we can maintain a 5% return on that money, that's $75,000 a year. That is a substantial amount of money that goes in to help the MAP program for GVR. I think it's prudent that both the board of the foundation and the board of GVR continue to stress the importance of what MAP constitutes to the membership, and that donations are gladly accepted, whether they go to GVR or to the foundation. If the GVR, through your CEO, makes a request each year to the foundation, a grant request. That grant request was presented and we voted on it and said, go for it. And you're correct, Scott. Had you come back, there would have been some extra funds that I think we would have found to help if that was needed. The caveat to all of this, and Steve, you might be aware of this, you might not, but at an earlier meeting, or actually a late meeting last year, we had David Webster come and talk to us about the MAP program and how they're doing it, and we made some comments to him. We didn't say you had to do this, we just had an open discussion. And I think some of that percolated down into some of the decisions that were made or constituted to make relevant to who gets full membership and all. My final point. I have the pleasure of sitting on several boards. I sit on the committee for the wastewater for Pima County, and they have a program for assisting their customers who are not able to pay their full sewer bill. They are going through that program now and adjusting it slightly to have various tiers within that program. What David, Howie, Scott have done is tiered that in a very simplified, but a very fair way. And I think the benefit we hope to see is a collaboration between GVR and the foundation to promote donations to assist the MAP program. We're also, as Scott mentioned, diligently working on our bingo program, and that is bringing in a generous amount of money. We've made already over $10,000 in the first 3.5 months. And that is, projected out. We're fine for this year to help with the MAP program, but we need to build the endowment side. And that's what our push will be. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer.
I was just curious, how much is in the endowment now? Do you know?
Currently, the GVR Foundation has about $500,000. Not all of that is in the MAP endowment. About 150,000 is in the MAP endowment program.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, at this point, I think we've got to beat this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yep.
Steve, if you
Thank
feel that you need to bring it to the board for a vote, please feel free to
Okay.
do that. Okay, so, the next one would be the introductory financial statement. Chris David's going to, present for you.
Yes.
David Webster.
Thank you.
Here we go. Okay, thank you. As you can see, my presentation is part of the reason, I think. But it might be helpful if you got your handout. I'm gonna start on page 7, since the staff report. And, you guys give a lot of, you're responsible for this, there should be overseeing that. And I pulled out a couple of key statements in the CPM that's under that background justification. section that says that the board shall ensure that the fiscal affairs are managed in accordance with GAAP, that generally accepted accounting principles. And I'm gonna make this very simple. 90% of generally accepted accounting principles is the matching principle, meaning that if we, I'll give you a great example, dues. We fill out the dues all in December, we get a lot of the money in December, a lot of it in January. But when do we report that income? We report it over 12 months of the year, because that's when it's earned, really. That's the way GAAP would look at that. So that's just want to share that with you. That's a lot of what GAAP is all about. It's not cash. It's not, well, we got all the money and just report it. The money when we get it in cash, you report it as it's earned. Okay, and then also on that statement, it says it's managed in accordance with GAAP and that its financial strength is adequate for current needs and long-range strategies. So, and then the second part says that you monitor the progress of your annual fiscal objectives. That's really what we're doing with our financial reports. We set up a budget and we're monitoring that performance against the budget. And I'm gonna give you some and I hope I don't offend anybody, but this is gonna be very simplistic. Because because it's not that complicated. And I want to break this down to where everybody can understand it easily. So on page 8, that's the financial statement of financial position. And that's also known as a balance sheet. But in private, and not private, but in nonprofit world, we call it the statement of financial position. And when I look at this, and if I was a board member, I would look at the top half where it says assets, because our cash assets and investment assets are a huge part of managing this company's financial objectives. And you can see here that we have 11,959,424. You see those designated investments? That's something that you as a board member ought to kind of keep an eye on and say, well, that's what if that's to spend that money, the board has to designate that money through either initiatives or the MRR process, which is the reserve study. There's other interesting things on that sheet, but I would, if it was me, that's what I would focus on. I'd look at it year over year. Look, we're 11,959,000 as of the end of February. We were at 10,416,000 at the beginning of the year. Well, that jumped up $1.5 million. And understanding why that happened, well, we funded our MRR reserve in January. But that, if I was looking as a board member, that's what I would focus on this statement of financial position. Now I'm going to go on to this next page, page 9, which is the statement of activities. And that what I just read earlier, that you're required to monitor progress towards our fiscal objectives. Well, let's look at the headings here real quick. The first column on the left is a prior year comparison. It's taking the 2024 actual and comparing it to the current year. I should have said it the other way. You're taking the 2025 actual and comparing it to the prior year. So for example, our total revenue is 2,176,667. That's the 2025 actual for the first 2 months of the year. You compare that to last year, and we are $57,060 ahead of last year. And then I warned you I was gonna make this very simple. Something if you ever want to take an accounting class, something you want to learn. When accountants talk about variances, positive is good, negative is bad. That's just an easy way to remember. So when I say there's a 57,060 positive variance from this year to last year, that means it's good because we brought in that much more money. Now I'm going to jump all the way down to the expenses. And you'll see that for the year, we've had $1,915,253. You see that? And you compare that to the prior year of $2,047,000, we're actually 132,000 less. But it's a positive number because why? Because in expenses, that's good. If you're less than your expenses, that's good. And so through February, compared to last year, we were ahead on income, we're ahead on expenses. So we were doing comparatively to the prior year, doing well. And then when you look in the middle section, and this is the real key that your fiscal affairs committee spends a lot of time on, is comparing your actual to budget. So let's look at the total income again. 2,176,667 is our income. Well, how does that compare to our budget? It was different by 147,089. Now it's in a positive or negative number. It's a negative number, so that means that we're under budget on our revenue through the first 2 months of this year. Let's jump down to the bottom of the sheet. And you see that our expenses, actual expenses are 1,915,000 compared to a budget of 2,177,000. We're over $250,000 under our expenses for the first 2 months of the year. I'm not here to really talk about where we stand. I just want to get an understanding of these financial statements. Now, if you're someone that's really pressed for time, you don't want to look at all this numbers. I'll show you the number. If you want to look at one number on this document, it's that 115,123 at the very bottom. See, that variance says the total variance from budget is a positive $115,123. That means compared to budget, we are ahead when you consider all of our expenses and our income. And another question you might ask is, well, I thought we had a zero surplus budget. Yeah, we do. But to get to a zero surplus, you have to show a gross surplus. And that number is on this sheet. You look at the third column to the right, under the column where it says fiscal year budget. So fiscal year budget is the left column of the last section. You go down to the very bottom, you'll see that income minus expenses are budgeted to be 915,868. So we have to show a gross surplus in order to fund our reserves and a few other adjustments that I'm not getting into today. But I just wanted to give you a very high level view of when you talk about monitoring progress. This is the best way to do it as far as our performance and as far as our activities go. I will stop for a second. Is there any questions so far? Yeah.
David, I think it would be important to highlight in the revenue section, because we place a lot of emphasis on it, where the home sales are. Because we track home sales under capital revenue. And that is a line that is important for a number of reasons. It includes our home sales and also basically the home sales. But it also is shared. 20% of the money that comes in through that line goes over to the initiatives fund. So as that line fluctuates on these financials, it impacts our initiatives budget. And so that's an important line that the FAC tracks. And I think we have a separate sheet on tracking home sales. I just wanted to bring that up.
That's a good point. And then I will add to that. When you study our income, you see, look in the budget column, out of 12.6 million budgeted, see that of total revenue, 7.35 million are dues. That's relatively fixed. If we bill those dues, 99.99% of the time, we're going to collect those dues. But when you get down to the capital revenue that Nellie's talking about, that is an important line item. You can see that we had 400,891 so far this year, which is 15,000 ahead of budget, which we are really pleased to see that, because that's a variable income line item that can greatly affect your ability to meet your financial objectives.
What comprises other income?
Okay, we look at it. How is that? So I have to answer this on my own, don't I?
Mhm.
That is, we have a dues payment plan, and there's a small fee for members to use that. But I'll tell you, the larger amount in that other income is the credit card fees that we charge our members when they use their credit card. And you'll see that that's greatly under budget for this year. That they did not, that people converted to pay with check more than paying with credit card because of that fee, I believe. That's a good question. Any other questions on the, yeah,
Is the credit card fee an in and out? Basically, I mean, you're getting charged by the credit card company, so you're just collecting what you're charging, basically. So-
basically,
Yeah, all right.
yes, yes. Okay, so I'm gonna move on to page 10, to go on to questions. This is a statement I don't spend a lot of time on, but I wanted to show you, because we're talking about planning for long-term goals. Well, a lot of that is in these reserve funds, the emergency reserve fund, maintenance repair replacement fund, the initiatives fund, and the pools and spas fund. And I'll show you that, you remember when we were looking at the statement of financial position, I said that the board designated funds a total of 11,959,424. You can see that number at the bottom of the page. That's all the designated funds that you as the board are required to give us approval to spend that money. Which, by the way, maintenance, repair, replacement fund, I think everybody knows this, that's approved through the budgeting process. We have about $2.3 million worth of activities that we're going to perform out of that fund this year. But I also want to show you that if you see the MRR column, you see 1,324,805. That was the funding that went in January. That was the annual funding amount that you approved, and we made that transfer in January into the MRR fund. And the other funds, such as initiatives and the pool fund, well, the pool fund was a one-time, not a one-time, it's an annual funding process that's done in January, whereas the initiatives funding, which is what Nellie was just talking about, that's the 20% that goes into that fund, okay?
141.
It's 141,000, and that's cash, that accounts for some transfers that were from 2024 home sales, if that makes any sense. Okay, then I want to look at this next page, is the cash requirements report. This is something that you really shouldn't spend a lot of time looking. The reason I say that is this is a tool for us to use with to manage our own cash flow and to communicate with our investment advisor as to how much cash we're going to be needing. For example, I told you we're going to need X dollars of cash in the first quarter, and we ended up not needing quite that much. So we've got more cash in our investments than we really intended. But that's for FAC and investments committee. We have benchmarks, we have metrics that we follow to make sure we have adequate funding for our short-term and long-term goals and strategies. I'm going to move on to the next page, which is page 12. And the reason I included this, and I want to talk about page 12, is this picture, this graph. This is a graph of cash on hand, and we measure it by how much money we need per day on the average. And it's about $30,000 a day is what we need. But you can see the cash on hand in January was 193 days worth. But as the year progresses, you see it declines all the way down, and that, I didn't write down the number. The line there, that's the 90 days, solid line, and that's at 2.7 million. And we are projecting to go down below that for a couple of months this year. I bring this up really just to kind of, so you get a picture in your mind of how our fiscal cycle is. We're cash flush in January, and then we're not in November, but that's okay. That's the way we planned it, and that's the way we track it. The only thing is we set a standard that we try not to go below 90 days. We have last couple of years, and I think that the board might be talking about this a little bit, but I wanted to get this picture in your mind so you can see how our cash cycle works. Any questions or confusion about that? Then I'm gonna move on to page 13. And this is the other thing that Nellie brought up, that on our capital revenue, we're very interested in that. And I'll help, because there's a lot of numbers on this page. I apologize for that, but you can kind of look at the highlighted line where it says budgeted monthly resales. You see that there's 50 homes in January, 63 homes in February, 100 in March, So we do a monthly budget, and it's very cyclical, as you can see, from a high point of 100 in March to what is my low point? September?
July, no,
September's 52.
Yes.
yeah, September.
So if you, let's go back to January and February, we had a month. In January, we were 11 homes above our budget. You can see that. And in February, we were 2 homes under. And if you go down to the next section below, that gives you year-to-date numbers. And so 11 minus 2 gives you 9. Year-to-date, we were 9 houses above our budget. And I'm glad to report that March is 105.
Wow.
Wow.
So we're off to an okay start. But we're still cautious, looking forward, very cautious looking forward. Because we missed this budget pretty significantly last year.
Yeah.
Or good.
Yeah, and I'll tell you another thing, while we're here, I never say this, you know, a number, if a board member, if there's a number that you'd like to see grow, there's a lot of, house sales are certainly one, but the very top line that says new members, these are people that have voluntarily deed restricted. In January, we had 1, February, we had 2, and in March, we have 2 more. You're gonna get capital fee, $3,100, you're gonna get a transfer fee of $450. And annual dues, you'll get annual dues out of that. So that's people that are willing to commit to that kind of financial obligation, and that just says a lot of good things, I'd love that number to be even higher. Any thoughts or questions on that page, page 13?
Just comment on, this is a sheet that the FAC tracks very closely. And one of the modifications that we discussed, if you remember, there was a law change in last September, a state law change that impacts our housing sales with regard to how a home is transferred between relatives. And so we're looking at how we track that because we anticipated it impacted about $150,000 less revenue. And we want to see how close we are to our projection on that. So this is a chart that we look at. And we have also focused one of our action plan items for the FAC is to look at how we project home sales going into the next year, because that impacts our budget as well. So home sale projections, housing sales is an extremely important part of the revenue forecast.
Very good. And then finally, this is the brand new report. It's called Capital Improvements Projects Master List. I really like this because it gives, I lost the word, subjective, or it gives descriptive descriptions of each project. It helps me keep track of what project is where. Not only does it give you the project name and location, it gives you the scope of work that helps you know what's actually happening with the project. And then some other notations. But then I like also out here, it says funding sources. Where's that money coming from? The West Center Artisan Shop, let's see, it's coming from initiatives. So this is a pretty good report, but I can already tell that I gave you an old report. There's a new column added that shows the balance. You see how we have the budget total and it's spent today. And then the last column, there's another column that'll give you the balance. I think it's a good forward level report, and it's prepared by our facilities folks. They check the numbers with us, but I really like it because I don't know what's going on with the projects. They can give that to you here, and I think this is a great report. Okay, I told you it was pretty simple, and I think I accomplished that, but I didn't lose anybody. But
Did you want to go over this budget worksheet summary for 2025? Oh, that's Scott's.
And it's
Okay,
Scott's.
okay.
Thank you all. Hopefully we help get a high level understanding.
Thank you.
Mhm,
Thank you, David.
mhm.
Good work on those home sales for March.
Yes.
So we will go on now to the capital projects, the cost updates. impact on the projections and cash flow that Scott is going to present to us?
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to really just have a conversation with the board about our budgeted and anticipated initiatives projects for 2025. As we just talked about, and we've had a couple of years of declining housing sales, challenging revenue streams. We ended last year with a deficit from our budget. The year before, I think we had a $12,000 surplus.
Right.
And that was it. But overall, we are in a bit of deficit. We're seeing housing sales pretty flat right now compared to budgeted, but the budget is nowhere near where we were 3 years ago when we were seeing 1,200 housing sales a year compared to 800 housing sales a year. So we're down significantly. And again, that's $3,100 a pop, and 20% of that goes into our initiatives fund. And so I'm really going to talk about initiatives because that's really where we fund our new projects. That's why it's called initiatives. They are the new things. MRR, as a reminder, maintenance, repair, and replacement is all about maintaining current facilities. Initiatives is something new. So the Desert Hills Fitness Center is new. The Desert Hills Locker Room project is new. The Glass Art Studio at Santa Rita Springs is new. Metal Arts would be new. West Center Lobby would be new. These are all new. So, the board of budget adopted the budget in October, with certain assumptions and anticipations of what the year was going to look like. Our revenues have been about what we anticipated, but we're still very cautious. Our costs, however, have gone up. The bids that we have, we've put out RFPs and RFQs for our projects. The bids have come in higher than we anticipated. We're hearing that contractors are adding a minimum of 20% to their bids because of the uncertainty with tariffs and materials and supply costs. So we're having to take a look at our 2025 anticipated projects. So this is such a great dovetail into what you were talking about. I want to start, this is just the initiatives. We've got the first column here is budgeted 2025. The next column is, let's just call this projection 2025, and then we've got 6, 7, 8, and 9. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, that's our capital improvement plan. The first year of the plan is the capital budget. So you can see what was budgeted and how we're already having to adjust from budgeted 2025 to projected 2025. We ended up with a lower beginning fund balance than we anticipated. We've got funding from operations less than anticipated. We had a little bit more of a transfer from emergency than we anticipated, and we've ratcheted down our net earnings a little bit. Our projects, our costs, as a reminder, we've got the Del Sol Clubhouse parking note. This is an $11,000 note that we pay to the GVR Foundation annually. It's a 10-year note, and I think we are in year 7. Is that right? Kind of? All right, something like that.
Goes through
It was
29.
When you first came, so.
Oh, all right. Okay, well, then we're doing good. The kiln room. So for those of you that remember the Ceramics Club kiln room, there's a couple things going on here. This line here is really just about the second level kiln room, expanding the floor, bringing some of the electrical up to code so that they can add a 5th kiln, taking a look at some of the ventilation just to be sure. We're keeping this basically at what it is. We haven't seen bids, but we think we're going to be within this 90,000. So we're not asking for any changes or anticipating changes to that. You'll recall I sent out an email a few weeks ago about the metal art shop. We've got, we budgeted $150,000. Bids came in at $235, and we've already spent some soft costs and architectural fees of about $15,000. The email that I sent to you for a few weeks ago said, okay, we're concerned because we still have the Desert Hills locker room project and bids to come in, and we want to be conservative about that. So at the time, I recommended that we delay the West Center lobby improvements till 2026. And we budgeted $150,000 for that. We did get a bid in, and it came in close. I think it was about $158,000. But trying to be conscientious about club needs and member needs, et cetera, it seemed to be the right thing to do to recommend delaying the West Center lobby improvements in order to make sure that the metal shop project and the Desert Hills locker room project, as well as we've got big things coming up here in the future, particularly the West Center lapidary and artisan club expansion project. That's a almost $1 million project. So it seems prudent and responsible to delay the West Center lobby improvements, and my position hasn't changed on that. Now I'm doing it. There we go. So you can see in 2025, we're not projecting to spend any dollars, even though we budgeted 150. The metal shop is doing a little bit better. Now, the staff report I sent to you has been updated since then. This has been kind of a moving, fine-tuning document. And when we come to you next week and ask you to award a contract for the metal shop, you'll have more detail. But at the end of the day, we were able to cut some costs from 235 down to 207 for the metal arts project. So that's great.
You from the 250 that we have here. It's
Yeah,
not
it was 250.
No.
We're now at 243, but one of the things that we want to make sure that we're doing here, and we haven't done a good job of doing this, is planning for a 10% contingency in our projects in case something comes up. So this 243 includes a 10% contingency. We're hoping it doesn't happen, but we should budget for it. It's the responsible thing to do, to budget for it. And we lost, I think, some communication between myself and David and our project management team to make sure we were including those in our budgeted numbers. So we're doing that now. We want to make sure we do that going forward. So all in costs, so hard costs, which is construction, soft cost, architectural fees, permits, et cetera, and contingency, we're looking at 253 for 43 for the metal shop. The locker room, now this is interesting. We're going to talk about this in much greater detail next week. We have gone back to the drawing board on the locker room by using essentially the same footprint, but getting rid of, well, we did this before. We eliminated the outdoor shower and the companion restroom, but we're just using the existing footprint of the locker room. In other words, we're not pushing into what used to be part of the fitness center, the old fitness center. We're keeping the showers, the toilets right where they are, so we're not having to upgrade or move plumbing around. This has shifted mostly from an initiative project now to more of an MRR project. So that's why we're seeing the cost of initiatives going from 249,335 down to 91,956.
Question.
Yeah.
Wasn't the main purpose of doing this project to expand the locker rooms?
It was, and so we will definitely talk about it
Okay.
more next week.
Okay.
I will provide those floor plans for you where you can see the existing, what was planned, which was a much bigger scope, and what we've come up with. And by removing some walls around, we were able to accomplish one of our primary goals, which was to create more room in the dressing area, the
Mhm.
locker room area.
Yeah, it's the one I use and I know how cramped
I do
it is.
too, and you've got a lot of people traversing through the changing area really to get to the sinks
Right.
and the lockers and the restrooms, and it's just not there. So the wall, we're looking at removing that privacy wall and moving it so that the lockers can be expanded towards the front door.
Okay,
And by doing so, we've been able to eliminate, you'll see the floor plan, we'll be able to eliminate all that cross flow traffic. it's not perfect, but it's a lot better than it was. And I think at the end of the day, it's gonna be a much better solution. The staff report was correct, though. Remember, we budgeted, this was just initiatives, 249, but when you include the MRR for this project, which was 145, and potentially the other 90,000 from the kiln room, and I'll again explain why these are really one project. We had budgeted, you know, somewhere closer to 485 for this entire project. The bids came in, there were two bids. The minimum bid came in at 687.
Wow.
Yeah,
To expand into fitness.
correct, correct. So we quickly got together and said, we gotta come up with another solution, because we cannot, even if we wanted to, we don't have the money like we did a few years ago. So we have to really, anyway, I think we've come up with a pretty good solution, and we're gonna be able to present this to you next week. This is really a kind of a precursor to next week, and we want to make sure that we're on the right track of moving forward in the direction that I'm laying out here for you, with delaying the lobby improvements, continuing on the metal shop, that was more expensive than we anticipated, spending less on the locker room, but getting probably 80%, 85% of what we wanted. The East Center lapidary gas manifold. This has become a bit more expensive than we anticipated, and the club, lapidary club, has said, you know, it's more important that we move forward with our West Center Club expansion. We'd rather move that 43,000 to the budget of the 991,524 for that project. So you'll see in this line item, here's the budget, 991,524. We're anticipating for 25. And again, this is just an assumption. It could change, but we're anticipating we'll spend around 400,000 in 25 and about 634 in 26. The 634 includes that 43,000.
So we just added it in. We didn't re-engineer the dollar amount and try to stick within the 991. The 43,000 is in the second year.
We put it right here.
Okay.
Yeah, this is now up to 1,034,000.
Okay, just a couple of questions on that particular number. I'm concerned that there's not an inflationary factor built into that second year.
Sure.
And so, if we were to do this, we should, I would think, consider an inflationary factor. And do we have any idea, have we started looking at any kind of bids coming in?
Yeah, in fact, I'm sorry to tell you, but we're gonna ask you to meet in May for that very reason. Because costs are so sporadic, the architect believes and recommended that we bring on a contractor sooner than later, so we can have them assist with the design of the project. It's called a design and build contract. And so this would allow us to bring in that contractor much earlier to work with staff, the club, the architect on really taking a look, value engineering the project, being very cost conscious from the beginning and not after the construction documents are done. They would be influential in shaping those construction documents. So we're expecting that we're going to be able to ask the board to approve that contract with a contractor in May.
And with our audit completed, what's our cap that we're working under for approval of capital projects that don't need to go for a membership vote?
Plus the
Well,
12%.
It's 12% of, and just,
Still at about 1.3 or 4.
Sounds right.
okay, I'm just kind of looking at the rest of the projection going into the other years
Project.
per
It
project.
says per contract technically, doesn't say per project. It says the board may not award a contract for greater than 12% of audited revenues annually without a vote of the
Of
members.
the membership.
So I think we're okay here. And you're right about the inflationary though. the truth is, and we budgeted this way, we budgeted all 991 and 25, but there was no way we were gonna get all that spent.
Right.
The project is barely gonna get off the ground by then. So,
Got a question.
yes, sir.
On the lapidary gas manifold. Is my memory correct? And that's like a size of the piping or some kind of security issue with that manifold?
There were questions and it was, they first talked about how they thought that this was a concern because they're having to move. They're not gas tanks, I think they're,
Cylinders.
yeah, they're like you would use a propane tank or something. They're having to move these around. And so this would provide a direct line into the center. There was concern that they're lifting them, they could drop them. So that's why they were concerned.
And that doesn't create any opportunity to pull from M&R?
It's new.
Oh, it's brand new.
Well, they haven't done it before, so it's a
Oh,
new line.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yep,
It's not an existing gas line. It would be a new line.
okay, thanks.
That's why.
Okay,
But keep in mind, they came to you all and said, this is a safety issue, we're concerned. They've now come back to us and said, we'd rather have it here. So I don't know. If somebody drops one of those things, I think that there could be an issue. I'm not an engineer, don't know how they're designed, but it seems that if you drop them, they're not a bomb.
how old are they? Like,
I don't think that
They're things you
they
get-
rent them, they buy them.
Yeah.
they test them.
So we've been doing this for many years.
They've been doing it for many years.
Yeah, it's not anything new.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think anytime that there's a change in the cylinder required by the state or feds, whoever has that requirement, then the company that sells them to you or leases them to you, requires that you get a new bottle that has the new requirements. So it's just like my propane tank and my barbecue. There have been times where I just fill it rather than exchange it for a new bottle. And at times a couple of times when I was in California, they came back and said, you need to buy a new bottle because it doesn't meet the
they
requirements.
age
of the
out,
state."
they age out, yeah, yep.
Yeah, did you?
It's pretty regulated.
Yep.
I know technically the line would be new, but you're replacing just the existing procedure or format or whatever you want to call it, so. It seems to me you could do M&R on.
At the end of the day, it's your money.
Not my money, I'm not laughing.
It's
I
our
think Bob
money.
Browning might say, well, you don't have an existing line here. You're not replacing or upgrading your line. You're changing your process in your procedure. I think he would probably say, I don't agree, but
Okay.
it's your money. I think that's exactly what he would say.
So the pipes over at Desert Hills Pool, right? Are we like just taking some out? I'm just comparing something like that compared to this.
That is,
and-
in that case, yeah, you are replacing some pipes for the pool there. You're replacing some pumps, some filters, some pipes. That absolutely calls for MRRA.
No, I'm just wondering, yeah,
For sure.
I didn't question that. I was just wondering if,
Now, if you're putting
The
in new
process-
pipes,
yeah,
like you're building the East Center pool, it's a new pool, it's a
Yeah.
new project. That used to be coming out of the initiatives fund before you had a pools and spas fund. So, yes. So what I'm gonna be asking for next year, first of all, I wanna make sure we're going in the right direction. By delaying the West Center lobby improvements, by continuing to move forward with the metal shop project. And by continuing with the locker room project, even though it's a modified project, I still think it meets about 80% of what we were shooting for there. The gas manifold moving to the lapidary and the artisan shop project. There's a few items that we would need to do. Technically, we don't need to do a budget adjustment to spend less money, but you do need one to spend more money. So as part of the motion for next week, we've asked, included in the recommended motion, to ask for a budget adjustment for metal shop, as well as award the contract, as well as authorizing staff to expend up to another 10% in change orders if necessary. And that's gonna become our practice going forward, so we make sure that we've got that 10% contingency in there. We don't need to ask for a budget adjustment for the locker room because we're spending less. We are asking to move the money here from the manifold to the expansion, so that would be included. Although I haven't done a staff report for that, I just realized we haven't asked the board to do that. I don't think I need to do that.
Nancy.
I'll have Nancy do it. Thank you, Nancy.
Do we need to ask for more money for the design and build contract?
Yeah.
Oh.
No, that would be part of this 1,034,000, we're hoping includes the all-in costs of your contractors, engineers, permits. Okay, so yeah, are we going in the right direction here?
Yeah, I think we are going in the right direction, and that is being cautious, and setting priorities. I think I would, just remind, people that in April, we also get our forecast for the year as part, we have our 3-month financials coming in, so we get our first look at the reestimate. And I think you're starting, and if we go back to looking at the funding from the operations revenue, that line, and also investment earnings, that's the one that can fluctuate on us as we go through the year. So it's important I'll be interested in what that number tells us as far as that sheet, because that will ricochet through these numbers as well. But I think to be cautious, but still make progress on the priorities is something that our memberships would want. But I think the forecast is going to help us. When we look at the forecast, it's going to help us become more knowledgeable where you think it's going to go. The same pressures that we're seeing on our capital projects going up, we're also going to be seeing in our operating budget on supplies and services. So we can't be in a situation, from my perspective, financially, as we were last year, by ending up in a $200,000 deficit. We really will have to manage that more closely. And one of the ways of managing it is looking at all areas that can be looked at as we go into the year of what we can potentially control. And those are very hard decisions to make if we're in that position. But we have to look at what the data shows us on housing sales. But those are important numbers to look at.
So
Agreed.
Scott, are you looking for like a consensus from the board? Because we can't do a motion.
Yeah, I think this was more or less informational, but if there was consensus that, you're going in the wrong direction here, we want the lobby to move forward, we're not interested in the metal shop moving forward anymore, and we want to do the Cadillac Desert Hills locker room plan, then that I would want to know that now. I didn't expect that would be the case. I kind of figured we'd be on the same page. Our perspective and position, especially with the lobby, at the end of the day, I think it will be an improved convenience for our members to have a one-stop shop up here for membership and customer service and passes and tickets, et cetera, instead of a little bit here and a little bit over here. We get a lot of people that get lost going from administration to here. And recall, we've also said that up here is a nice way to show off GVR to new members. It's beautiful. The mountains are there, the pool, this amazing auditorium, the archway. And then we've got this little office down here that's very small, and it's not a good introduction in our opinion. So we got the artisan shop right across the courtyard, so people can go in there and buy their trinkets. It's just a win-win. However, it doesn't have to happen this year. We are fine the way we are right now. We can delay that a year, in our opinion.
Question,
Yes.
you want our buy-in here, so I have a question on the Desert Hills. What was the big increase in cost and from what we originally? I mean, well, how did, we came up with a figure of 400,000 and all of a sudden we get a bid of,
Yeah.
you know.
A lot of it was plumbing.
Plumbing.
Because all of those restrooms and showers were being relocated and positioned into a different
Yeah.
space.
Mhm.
And at one point, they said, you know, we're gonna be digging up and jackhammering all of this. It would actually save you money if you just took the whole thing up and then put it down. And we said, yes,
Mhm.
that makes sense. And they actually included that upgrade, those updated ideas and scope in their bid.
Okay.
The other was, we were doing a lot of different things and moving things around. There was a huge, fire suppression bill that we didn't anticipate because we had moved so many things around. So all those heads and that infrastructure, was gonna have to be reworked. And that was a big number that we didn't anticipate. I should say it's bigger than we anticipated.
So the square footage is going from what to what? It was originally gonna be.
Yeah, gosh, I don't
Well, you
remember
can-
off the
you can
top of
give
my
me that
head.
Next week.
Yeah, the big outs perimeter envelope is staying the same.
Mhm.
The only difference is on the men's side, the companion restroom that's on the exterior will become part of the interior of the men's locker room. And the outdoor shower will become part of the women's interior of the
So
locker
there
room.
won't be an outdoor shower anymore?
Correct. And that was actually part of the original plan too. Those were both gonna
Cause I
go
use that
away.
outdoor shower.
Yeah,
You know, we know
When I
that.
go-
We have
I go in the
cameras.
sauna quite a bit.
yeah.
And this keeps the sauna where it is, you know, it
But
doesn't
there's no
expand.
shower
that.
though.
There's no shower. You'd have to go into the locker room. But again, that was part of the original plan too, so that we could maximize that space. So either way,
Mm.
that shower was anticipated to go away. Sorry.
Yeah, we like our outdoor showers.
We
Too
do.
bad.
I do,
On some of that
Hmm.
bid process where the costs are so high, do you not have a feeling from the companies that do their hedging, not knowing what the tariffs are gonna cost
do.
them also?
Yeah, I
Because
think
costs will go up.
I think they are. I think that's absolutely what's happening. So we were all surprised and shocked when that bid came in. But we're seeing it across the board where bids are higher than anticipated. Contractors are worried and concerned, and they are hedging.
I would think.
Costs are going up. Yeah. Bev?
I just have a couple of questions regarding the future. It
Yeah.
says SRAL lower level expansion. What is that? And that's not until 2028, but I'm curious what that is.
This was the patio.
Santa Rita Springs.
Yeah, so this was something that the board approved.
No, SRAL, it says not, it doesn't say SRS.
Lower.
The heck? Where am I?
Santa Rita.
Oh, there it is.
Santa Rita.
Santa Rita Art League. That's what that is.
Oh,
So this may or may not even move forward. At the time, right here, there was, remember, they wanted initially for the board to consider building a second level on
mhm.
Santa Rita Springs on what's now the Fiesta deck.
Yeah.
And they worked with staff. Staff came up with a couple different ideas that would be better. The first one was to take the breezeway that's in front of their space and bump it out, bump that wall out into the breezeway. So that's the lower level expansion. That's what that is. Now, since then, we've taken the wall out between the Art League and the art room that was up front. They have a lot more natural light and they have a lot more space now. My understanding is they're really quite happy. Now that they have that, we're going to be checking back in with them and seeing if they still want or need that lower level expansion.
And the SRS social patio, where is that?
This was an idea to do that grassy area that's out there to make it more of kind of a social outdoor area for different types of activities. It could be just more seating, but more of an outdoor patio. It was going to be kind of an extension of this lower level extension as well.
There were some people playing, I think they call it cob, that thing where you throw wooden sticks, I mean, wooden blocks, I should say. And I could have the name wrong, but they were playing that game out there a week or so ago,
Yeah,
having a good time.
on the grass.
Pardon?
A new club.
Was it? I don't
No,
know.
I don't.
Haven't heard of it, no.
Yeah,
It's gotta
well, I
be.
saw something on it in the paper and it's, to me, it looks weird, but.
I'm sure it
you know,
is.
It's like bocce ball only with square blocks instead of round blocks.
I'll just share, we've talked about getting rid of the grass. We don't have any other grass. We find that dog walkers like to use the grass. And then we get complaints about the smell. Some people like to look at the grass, but there's consequences. So we've thought about really just revegetating it as more of a desert landscape and maybe moving it into something more like, we could put some chairs and benches out there as well, but if the board has any heartburn over that, please let me know. We don't have plans to do that right away, but that's something that's been something that we've talked about doing. Yes, ma'am.
Project, not on this, not on the initiatives, but it's on the next page, that the status of the pool at Desert Hills. Do we know anything more?
Yeah, we're at about 60% of construction documents for the update that needs to be done. The final documents, construction documents need to be finished. Cost estimates need to be established, permits, and then we're gonna go out for bid.
Okay, so
do you have
wouldn't
that
that
on
come
your
out of
sheet?
MR and RA versus B?
It should. Yeah, which
Okay.
one
So the sheet then would reflect an A.
which sheet are you looking?
I'm on the project sheet.
Page 18, your last page.
Oh,
It says MR and RB.
yeah, we maybe just haven't done that
And that
yet.
yet, okay,
But
so
that
it is
should
an A.
definitely be an A.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you for that.
Yep.
Yeah, good catch. Good catch. Oh, I didn't mention this. This is kind of a big deal, so I'm disappointed I didn't mention it. But remember the kiln room. Part of the kiln room upgrades were supporting the joists because of the weight of all of those kilns. And there was concern that the joists needed to be shored up. So the way we bid the locker room project included shoring up the joists because they're going to come up through the ceiling. They can't come from the top down. They got to go. So this 91,000 includes shoring up the joists. The 90,000 above is just money for the electrical, expanding the flooring, possibly taking a look at some ventilation. All right, any other questions? Hopefully this was helpful.
It was.
Answered. Good heads up.
It's a shame we have to cut it back, but
Yeah.
when nobody knows what's going to happen, they don't always have a choice.
I know, we feel the same way. Okay, well, I'll stop
so-
sharing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Yep.
Any member comments? Or any board members for the good of the cause?
It's 3:38.
Okay, then I'll take a motion for adjournment.
You were right.
I move to adjourn.
Thank you, Lily. Second. Thank you, Bev. Vote